The human mind is a remarkable thing, capable of contemplating the infinite, the infinitesimal, and the abstract. Yet, it is fundamentally shackled by its own biology. We are creatures of three-dimensional space, born into a world of height, width, and depth, and our senses have evolved to interpret reality through this narrow lens. This evolutionary inheritance makes the concept of a fourth spatial dimension one of the most profoundly difficult ideas to grasp. It is not merely a matter of adding another number to a coordinate system. It requires a complete rewiring of our intuitive understanding of space itself. We can easily point in three directions: left, right, back, forth, and up, down. These are the dimensions we navigate daily, the axes of our familiar three-dimensional world. But what if there is a fourth direction, one that is not merely a way of talking about time, but an actual spatial direction, a new place that our experience simply does not allow us to access directly? This is the question that has captivated mathematicians, philosophers, and physicists for over a century, and it is the central theme of Clifford Pickover's fascinating and provocative book, Surfing Through Hyperspace: Understanding Higher Universes in 6 Easy Lessons. Clifford A. Pickover, a prolific author and research staff member at the IBM Thomas J. Watson Research Center, is well known for his ability to make complex scientific and mathematical ideas accessible to a general audience. In Surfing Through Hyperspace, published by Oxford University Press in 1999, he takes on the challenge of exploring the fourth dimension and its inhabitants. Pickover himself notes that he knows of no subject in mathematics that has intrigued both children and adults as much as the idea of a fourth dimension. He observes that philosophers and parapsychologists have meditated upon this dimension that no one can point to but may be all around us, and theologians have speculated that the afterlife, heaven, hell, angels, and our souls could reside in a fourth dimension. Yet, despite all the philosophical and spiritual implications, this extra dimension also has a very practical side. Mathematicians and physicists use the fourth dimension every day in calculations, and it is part of important theories that describe the very fabric of our universe. What sets Pickover's book apart from other popular works on hyperspace is its focus on four-dimensional beings. As one reviewer notes, although most books on the subject focus on the geometrical features of the four-dimensional world, there is little discussion of four-dimensional beings, how they may appear and behave, and the possible religious implications of such creatures. Pickover wrote his book to fill this lacuna, resulting in a fascinating exposition of what such beings may be like, and how they could penetrate our world. The book is pitched to both the novice reader and those more familiar with hyperspace, and it includes 6 main chapters, as well as 9 appendices directed to advanced students of the subject. Each chapter begins with a fictional narrative modeled on the TV show The X-Files, in which 2 FBI agents in the year 2012 come into contact with four-dimensional beings. This leads into discussions of a wide range of topics: the concept of degrees of freedom, wormholes in space, Möbius worlds, how a whale could be stuffed into a marble-sized four-dimensional sphere, the possibility that four-dimensional creatures could perform bloodless operations on humans, how such creatures would appear if they penetrated our world, and what sounds they might make. The book is structured as a journey of discovery, following the 2 FBI agents as they investigate the mysterious hyperbeings. The second-person narrative places the reader in the role of the chief investigator, a Mulder-esque agent, who teams up with a skeptic named Sally. Sally initially does not believe in beings from the fourth dimension, but this changes abruptly when she is abducted by them. She becomes the pupil of the chief and, along with the reader, is off to explore higher dimensions. This narrative device, while sometimes criticized as being aimed at a younger audience, serves to make the abstract concepts more accessible and engaging. The story provides a framework for the scientific and mathematical discussions, turning an intimidating subject into a scientific game open to all dreamers. The book's structure, with its alternating sections of science fiction and scientific exposition, is part of its charm, allowing readers to absorb complex ideas in a more relaxed and entertaining manner. The core of Pickover's exploration lies in understanding how a four-dimensional being would appear to us in our three-dimensional world. The key to this understanding is the concept of a cross-section. Pickover draws on the classic analogy of Flatland, Edwin Abbott's 1884 novella, which remains the foundational text for thinking about higher dimensions. In Abbott's story, a two-dimensional square is visited by a three-dimensional sphere. The sphere appears to the square as a point that grows into a circle, reaches a maximum size, and then shrinks back to a point and disappears. This is because the square can only see cross-sections of the sphere as it passes through its plane. Pickover extends this analogy to the fourth dimension. He suggests that if a four-dimensional being, or hyperbeing, were to pass through our three-dimensional space, we would only see its cross-sections. He proposes that these cross-sections would likely look like disconnected, floating blobs of flesh, constantly changing in size and shape. This is because, just as a 3D hand passing through a 2D plane would appear as 5 separate circles, the cross-sections of the fingers, a 4D body passing through our 3D world would appear as a collection of separate, irregularly shaped pieces. These pieces might be attached to claws, teeth, lips, eyes, or hair, creating a truly bizarre and unsettling appearance. The powers of a four-dimensional being, as Pickover envisions them, are nothing short of godlike from our perspective. Such a hyperbeing would have abilities that would seem miraculous to us. Because it could move in a direction we cannot perceive, it could bypass any three-dimensional barrier. For instance, a hyperbeing could remove a dot from inside a circle without breaking the circle, simply by lifting it out into the third dimension. By analogy, a 4D being could remove a tumor from your brain without cutting through your skin, or remove your breakfast from your stomach without any incision. It could look inside any 3D object or life form, seeing everything inside you, including your internal organs. Nothing would be hidden from it, no matter how hard we tried to hide. It could make objects appear or disappear at will, simply by moving them into or out of the fourth dimension. It could walk through walls, and three-dimensional knots would fall apart in its hands, much as a 2D knot, a loop of string lying on a plane, can easily be undone by a 3D being simply by lifting the end of the loop up into the third dimension. A pair of gloves could be transformed into 2 left or 2 right gloves with a simple rotation through the fourth dimension. Pickover also speculates on the evolutionary biology of four-dimensional beings. He considers how the fraction of volume near the surface of a body changes in higher dimensions. In a d-dimensional sphere, the fraction of volume within a small distance of the surface is given by 1, open parenthesis, 1 minus a close parenthesis to the power of d, whereas a small distance relative to the radius. For a 4D sphere, about 34% of the volume is within 0.1 r of the surface, compared to 27% for a 3D sphere. For higher dimensions, this fraction increases dramatically. In a 10-dimensional sphere, about 65% of the volume is within 0.1 r of the surface. This has significant implications for the evolution of life in higher dimensions. With so much volume close to the surface, heat dissipation and the movement of nutrients and oxygen would be strongly affected. Pickover speculates that primitive 4D beings might evolve so that they digest on the outer surface, with other organs, like brains and hearts, located deep inside. The outer surface would be digestive and pulmonary, containing sense organs and orifices for excretion and sex. This is a radical departure from our own evolutionary history, where the primary structural differences involve the complexity of organs attached to a central tube. The book also explores other fascinating questions. What would the speech of a 4D being sound like using 4D vocal cords? How would photons work in 4 dimensions? How do 4D beings see? The religious and philosophical implications of this exploration are perhaps the most provocative aspect of Pickover's work. He writes that, throughout time, various mystics and prophets have likened our world to a 3-dimensional cage, speculating on how great our perceptions would be if we could break from these confines. Theologians have speculated that the afterlife, heaven, hell, angels, and our souls could reside in a 4th dimension, and that God and Satan could literally be lumps of hypermatter in a 4-dimensional space inches away from our ordinary 3-dimensional world. Pickover asks directly, could God be a 4-dimensional being? He suggests that if a hyper-being was observed in biblical times, it would certainly have been considered a god, with many characteristics of omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence. He explores how an encounter with a hyperbeing today would affect our world and religion, and what the religious significance of such an encounter would be. This line of inquiry has been both praised and criticized. Some reviewers find it fascinating and thought-provoking, while others are unsure if Pickover is being tongue-in-cheek or genuinely believes in the religious possibilities of these speculations. Nevertheless, it is this willingness to push the boundaries of conventional thought that makes Pickover's book so engaging and memorable. As one reviewer noted, the book is a whimsical, delightful, and always fun exploration of the bizarre realm of higher dimensions, where common sense becomes obsolete. The book is not without its critics. Some reviewers found the science fiction narrative to be a distraction, preferring the more substantive mathematical and physical content found in the appendices and notes. Others felt that Pickover relied too heavily on Flatland and repeated ideas that are already familiar to those with an interest in the subject. However, even these critics acknowledged the book's value as an entertaining and informative introduction to higher dimensions. The book was a main selection of the Doubleday Book Club and received advance praise from notable figures such as Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote, "I can't imagine anybody whose mind won't be stretched by this book." New Scientist called it an extraordinary book, noting that the ideas within it are so alluring that they could spread like wildfire, infecting minds everywhere. The reviewer for New Scientist admitted to falling victim to this infection and read the book in 2 sittings, remaining under its influence long after. Surfing Through Hyperspace is more than just a book about geometry. It is a book about the power of imagination. It challenges us to think beyond the confines of our 3-dimensional existence and to consider the possibility of a universe far stranger and more complex than we can possibly imagine. It forces us to confront the limits of our perception and to ask questions about the nature of reality, the existence of other dimensions, and the possibility of beings that are fundamentally beyond our comprehension. The book urges all curious readers to venture into the unexplored territory lying beyond the prison of the obvious. It is a testament to the power of human creativity to conceive of realities beyond our direct perception, and a reminder that the greatest adventures are often not outward, into space, but inward, into the vast and uncharted territories of the human mind, where the impossible is not an obstacle, but an invitation to imagine.